This is Jimmy Leach. My partner Steve Bowers is on assignment elsewhere this morning. We come this time every week, come to you and talk about police issues, police cases, law enforcement issues, criminal justice, all of those things. Let's start this week with some things down in South America, Brazil. Interesting thing happened in Brazil, a small town. They had three banks in this town, and evidently the robbers got information that one of those banks was holding some money. Apparently, they didn't know which one, so they hit all three. These folks were very sophisticated. I think there were about a dozen of them. One of them got killed in the robberies, while committing the robberies, and two robbery victims, were also murdered. They're looking for about a dozen other robbers, I think. A couple of interesting things. Obviously, they were very organized, but they set bombs to distract the police. They said at one point there were 380 officers looking for these folks. They set bombs to distract them, which is kind of an old terrorist trick, actually. And the bombs blew off some guy's feet. Poor fellow lost both of his feet with the bombs. And then when they hit the banks, they took hostages out of the banks. I said they killed two. They killed two robbery victims. And then they took hostages out of the banks and strapped them to the roofs of their cars, 10 vehicles, and they put them on the roofs. The robbers themselves were using drones, and perhaps they were doing that. They were afraid of an armed drone attack or something. I don't know. But anyway, as of this morning, as far as I could find out, we are still looking for 12 of those robbers. Two of them were captured. One of them is dead. Here in the United States, out in Colorado, we had three officers and two paramedics that have been indicted in a death case there. I think it's near Aurora, or in Aurora, I think, Colorado. It actually happened back in 2019. The reason it's taken this long, of course, the pandemic slowed everything down. But the local prosecutor declined prosecution, did not think there was a case there. The governor of Colorado came back and said, no, I want it to be looked at, appointed a new prosecutor, indictments ensued. The grand jury handed down 32 indictments on 5 people. The indictments were for the death, obviously. They were not like first-degree murder cases. They did not allege there was a premeditation or malice aforethought, anything of that nature. They're about negligence, those type of issues. Apparently, the police got a call from someone, I'm not sure if it's a business owner or a private individual, said there was a suspicious person, a person acting suspiciously. When they responded, they found this guy walking down the street. And this is, I look back, double check myself, and this is in 2019. This is pre-pandemic, okay? This guy had a mask of some type on. All right, that's all that I could find out. Said he had a mask on, but it wouldn't have been in protection from some virus, some COVID-19 or anything. I don't think, not in 2019. I don't believe. Anyway, something happened between him and the police, and I haven't seen any tapes, and haven't been able to find any. Not that much has been written on it at this point. We'll keep up with it, probably more. But they got into it with the police. At some point, the guy made some kind of comment that I'm just this way, and you know, you're taking this wrong, and what have you. It was serious enough they put him in a chokehold, and I've been in a chokehold, okay. And if they put it on right, it's all over with. Once you get in a chokehold, it cuts off the flow of blood to your brain. And if it's put on appropriately, and the person knows what they're doing, you know, you won't resist any further after that. I'll tell you. The guy, they called the paramedics after subduing this fella. Don't know exactly what, I'm saying subduing, don't know exactly what kind of fight took place. I don't know. I don't know exactly what happened for them to get to a situation where they were going to arrest him and put hands on him. They didn't explain all this. We'll just have to find out later. But paramedics showed up, and they gave the guy a shot of ketamine. Ketamine, I think it's ketamine, which is an anesthetic, very powerful anesthetic. They carried the guy to the hospital, and one article said the next day, and one article said a week later. So I don't know. The guy dies. So, like I say, the local prosecutor declined prosecution at the beginning. The governor appointed someone else, came in, got 32 indictments on 5 different people. We'll follow that, folks, and see how it turns out. In another case in Southern California, we had a man convicted of murdering a police officer and another person. This trial was for the police officer murder. This stemmed, I believe, from a drug deal. It's also, some time ago it was, let's see, I think it's about 2 years old. And this comes from what they call a routine traffic stop. It's one of my pet peeves if you listen to us very often. In police business, nothing's routine. There are no routine traffic stops. There are no routine accident investigations. There are no routine domestic calls. Anything can turn deadly in the police business very, very quickly. Apparently, the defendant in this case had a problem with a drug deal gone bad. Shot and killed another guy. Then stole this guy's car. Then as he got away from that scene and somewhere on down the road had an accident, had a crash. Police respond to a traffic accident. Okay, that's what they're responding to, is a traffic accident. They pull up, the guy opens fire on them, wounds one officer and kills the other one. Okay. Routine traffic investigation, right? If you wonder sometimes why police may be a little standoffish or maybe a little short-tempered with you or whatever, keep in mind, folks, they don't really know what they've got until they interact with you for a minute and find out. And sometimes we can't be sure of it then. Anyway, they're just asking for life in prison. I don't think the guy's been sentenced yet. Life in prison without parole is the most he can get. The DA out there in California will not ask for the death penalty. So that's all we can get. A few other cases that some of them we've been following that are having things going on with them, and we're going to do some follow up on these, and in our podcasts and also our YouTube TV channel. The Lee Boyd Malvo. If you remember this, now this goes back a few years. The DC snipers, okay? It was Malvo, Lee Boyd Malvo, and John Allen Muhammad. I believe his middle name was Allen. It was a grown man. Muhammad was a grown man. Malvo was a kid. And we'll talk about this case a little more in depth. I'll do another podcast or a thing on the YouTube about this. Fascinating case, actually. But they were random snipers. When it first happened, it wasn't that long after 9/11. I was heavily involved in training with Homeland Security at that time, and I thought it was a terrorist incident to start with. And you could make an argument that it was. But anyway, we'll get further in the case. What's happening now is that Lee Boyd Malvo, who was a juvenile when all this happened, his case is in front, I believe, of the Maryland Supreme Court. I don't believe it's the United States Supreme Court. I believe it's the Maryland Supreme Court. And they're saying, look, he got life without possibility of parole on, I think, 7 maybe cases. It's 7 or 9, I believe. And the question in front of the Supreme Court is, can you do a juvenile? Can you give a juvenile life without parole? Or is that, I guess they'd call it cruel and unusual punishment? Be interesting to see how that turns out. Another case that we've talked about, and this is one of the most interesting cases I've ever seen, and we're definitely going to go into this one a little more in depth, is the Robert Durst murder trial. It's basically like a 40-year deal with 3 different murders involved. He's being tried for this one. This trial started last year, and they called it off, I think, in like March or April of last year, and started back up in May of this year. And the judge is a pretty cool guy. When they started back up, like I said, they quit, I think in March or April of last year. They started back in May this year, and they said when they started up the court proceeding, the judge looked at the jury and said, all right, now where were we? And they got started again. And Durst, they said, the defendant, who's like 79 years old, I think, they've done an HBO special on this, and we're gonna have to get into this a little more in depth in another show. But they said he would sit in his wheelchair in courtroom and just act like he couldn't hardly keep his head raised. And then he got on the witness stand. He was on the witness stand for days. I want to say, and I'm not looking at my notes on this case right now. I think he was on there for like a couple of weeks, maybe 3 weeks. He got sick and they had to take a break. It's just been all sorts of things. And they said when the lawyers finally rested, they rested, I think, day before yesterday. Said the defense attorney and prosecutor said, Your Honor, we're through. We rest. You see the judge sit there a second, look back at the jury again and say, let's just savor this moment, okay? Because it's been so long they've been trying this case. It's had a little bit of everything. This is really an interesting thing. We'll get back on that. I think they're coming back for closing arguments, which is where the defense attorneys and the prosecuting attorneys make their final arguments to the jury. I think that's next week, maybe starting this September 8th or 9th. One more we're going to touch on. You know, we've talked about the Doomsday couple, the cult mom, Doomsday mom, Lori Fallow and Chad Daybell, the two dead children. The Daybells went to Hawaii while nobody knew where the kids were. It's just a terrible case. They had a 48 hours, the TV show 48 Hours, did a special on it this past week. I think it was Wednesday night. I watched it. I taped it and watched it. And the children, the show was publicized saying that Chad Daybell, who is the father, he was not the biological father of the children, but he was married to Lori, the mother. His children, his biological children, say, Daddy couldn't have done this. Well, you know, you can't, your heart breaks for these kids because they talk about how they, you know, get, people make fun of them in school and such things as that. And you know, it breaks your heart to see it. The kids, you know, they couldn't do anything about all this. But, you know, they didn't really come forth with any proof that he didn't do it. They just say, well, Daddy couldn't have done this. Well, you know, that's not an uncommon feeling. The one point they did make that I thought had some credibility, they found the two bodies on Daddy's land, on his farm there, what they called a pet cemetery. And his oldest daughter said, look, and he's not stupid. He wouldn't have left those bodies on his own property. Somebody's framing him. So we'll see how the trial takes out. Right now, Lori, the woman, the mother, is said not to be, she's been judged not mentally competent to stand trial. They are putting her through treatment and analysis. And I'd say they're saving the court, a chair for her in the courtroom. They'll be tried separately, but I'd say she's a good chance she'll end up being competent to stand trial. Once again, we will follow that. Very interesting case. That's about all we're going to talk about today. Would like to say one thing to you. If you follow my show, which is The Investigator, it comes on 9 o'clock on Saturday mornings. We've been on 93.1 since we started the show. We switched this week, Saturday morning, which will be the 4th, I think, of September. And we come on still at 9 o'clock in the morning, but we're going to be on 101.5, which is sort of a historic station here in Jackson, Tennessee, in West Tennessee. Looking forward to the move. Actually, we're the same company, just a different station. But we will come on at 9 o'clock on 101.5. We're going to have a replay of a real good interview we did with federal judge James D. Todd, who has been on the federal bench for, my goodness, I think 30-something years, I believe. He's at least been a judge that long. He's really excellent show, and you'll get a lot of good information, and the judge puts it in such a way that you can understand what's going on. He makes you feel like you were in the courtroom. Strongly suggest that you watch. If you can't get 101.5, Jackson FM radio station where you are, we're streaming live on WNWS.com, WNWS.com, or you can find Judge Todd's interview on our podcast, which is, our platform is Buzzsprout. It's probably on whatever platform you use. And our website is Tug News, T-U-G News, stands for Tennessee Underground News, tugnews.com. You can find it on there. Folks, that's all we've got for today. We appreciate you taking time to spend a little time with us, because we know your time is valuable. Until next time, my name's Jim Leach, and I ask you to please be safe.